Hello everyone, thank you for joining us on MNB World's News Mongolia, where we bring you the latest stories and updates from across the nation and beyond. I'm Batsir Namshir. Our top stories for News Mongolia. President U.Khurelsukh heads to Dubai to participate in COP28. E-Mongolia platform introduces a user-friendly mode for people with visual impairment. A plan to attract 100,000 tourists next year was presented. For the news, stay tuned. At the invitation of Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the President of the United Arab Emirates and ruler of Abu Dhabi, President U.Khurelsukh of Mongolia has departed for the World Climate Action Summit taking place in Dubai during the 28th session of the Conference of Parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, COP28, from November 30th through December 22nd.
On December 1st and 2nd, President U.Khurelsukh will present Mongolia's stance on crucial environmental issues during the summit, such as climate change, desertification, and global warming. He will also present the nation's policies and initiatives implemented to address these pressing concerns. The president's visit will also include meetings with heads of state and leaders of international organizations. COP28 will host heads of state and governments from over 140 countries to discuss climate change. Governments that signed the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change in 1992 discuss strategies to limit and prepare for future climate change. The conference will emphasize fast-tracking the transition to clean energy sources, securing financial support for climate action in impoverished nations, and negotiating a new deal for developing countries. Focusing on nature and people, COP28 aims to be the most inclusive ever. Themed events covering health, finance, food, and nature are also on the agenda. Ahead of the summit, the Office of the President of Mongolia and the Ministry of Environment and Tourism organized a consultation meeting on November 9th. The meeting addressed solutions, enhanced implementation, and cross-sectoral coordination of state bodies to ensure Mongolia's commitment to multilateral agreements such as the United Nations Convention on Climate Change, the Convention on Biological Diversity, and the United Nations Convention to combat desertification.
There are 115,000 people with special needs living in Mongolia. The E-Mongolia platform has introduced a new user interface mode for people with visual impairment to make public services more accessible.
Although the E-Mongolia portal makes public services more accessible to citizens, people with disabilities have still had difficulties using the portal. Now, people with visual impairments can order citizen ID cards and retrieve disability references through E-Mongolia.
It's important to provide public services to people with disabilities. We're also working to add a braille system to one-stop services.
Chimge system developers are also creating accessibility options for people with visual impairment.
The mobile device gives voice instructions to people with visual impairment. The system offers a language mode and recites the options on the screen for the user.
A team from the Mongolian University of Science and Technology is developing a tool that translates sign language into speech. This is a tool for people with impaired vision. It can be used during lectures and workshops. That one reads the text and converts it to speech. We took it into consideration the needs of people with impairment. This is for the student, and this part is for the teacher. It can be used during training by people with hearing impairment. According to officials, introducing accessibility technology to public services saves around 30 billion Mongolian tukraks per year.
In a significant move towards long-term tourism development policy, Mongolia has announced 2023 to 2025 as the years to visit Mongolia. Led by the Ministry of Culture, this effort is gaining attention globally. As part of this, Arhanga province aims to welcome 100,000 tourists next year.
Arhanga province aims to attract 100,000 tourists next year through tourism projects tailored to local conditions and particularities. The project was introduced to the Minister of Environment and Tourism of Mongolia, Batirten, and representatives of the Mongolian Tourism Association. The Ministry of Environment and Tourism of Mongolia supports locally organized tourism activities and has expressed its commitment to coordinating efforts within the tourism industry. Starting from January 2024, Arhanga province will host winter events with the theme Too Busy for Cold Weather Winterland. The activities will include the opening of a sled sports club, Hanganhasar Winter Festival, horse race, and more than 10 other sport events, as well as art performances. Also included are ice wall climbing and the Yak Festival. The minister also mentioned that Mongolia's first ice stadium will be constructed to promote winter tourism. Additionally, eco-sanitary facilities with winter heating capabilities will be built.
You're watching News Mongolia. Now let's take a look at the currency exchange rates provided by Mongol Bank. Now let's take a look at international news from our partner agencies. The Middle East plays host to its second straight UN climate conference over the next 2 weeks, with countries hoping to agree on new ways to keep the planet from heating too much by the end of the century.
Dubai prepared to host the COP28 climate talks Tuesday as world leaders, including U.S. President Joe Biden, signaled they would not be attending the negotiations that come during the ongoing Israel-Hamas war roiling the wider Middle East. It remains unclear if Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will attend the talks, particularly as Arab nations have reacted with anger over the punishing bombardment and ground offensive in the Gaza Strip after Hamas' October 7th attack on Israel. The United Arab Emirates reached a diplomatic recognition deal with Israel in 2020, but public anger still sits in this autocratic nation of 7 sheikdoms. The Israeli government didn't immediately respond to a request for comment. Dubai in the United Arab Emirates will welcome thousands of attendees for the 28th Conference of the Parties of the UN Climate Conference from Thursday until December 12 amid lingering doubt about how far the oil-rich country will go to help end a climate crisis driven largely by fossil fuel use. The world has gotten hotter since last year's conference in Egypt. Some experts say 2023 is already the hottest year ever recorded. The Northern Hemisphere had record highs this summer, and Brazil, where it's not summer yet, this month saw all-time high heat and humidity. Burning fossil fuels that sends carbon into the atmosphere remains the main cause of global warming, and production continues to grow. Climate campaigners say efforts to develop wind, solar, and other alternative energies are not going fast enough. The Paris Climate Accord of 2015 set a target to cap the rise of global temperatures at 1.5 degrees Celsius since the start of the industrial era, and the world is so far falling far short.
NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg on Tuesday welcomed the extension of the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Stoltenberg was speaking to reporters ahead of a meeting of foreign ministers of NATO headquarters in Brussels.
During the 2-day summit, the ministers will discuss a range of security issues ranging from ongoing support for Ukraine, the war between Israel and Hamas, and Sweden's accession to NATO membership.
It's our obligation to ensure that we provide Ukraine with the weapons they need, because it will be a tragedy for Ukrainians if President Putin wins, but it will also be dangerous for us. because then the message to all authoritarian leaders, not only in Moscow but also in Beijing, is that when they violate international law, when they invade another country, when they use force, they get what they want. So this is about the whole idea of a rules-based international order where territorial borders are respected. And therefore, NATO allies have provided unprecedented level of military support. This has really had an impact, made a difference on the battlefield, because the Ukrainians have been able to liberate around 50% of the territory that was occupied after a full-scale invasion. The challenge now is that we need to sustain this support.
Israel and Hamas agreed to extend their ceasefire for 2 more days past Monday, raising the prospect of further exchanges of militant-held hostages for Palestinians imprisoned by Israel and a longer halt to their deadliest and most destructive war. 11 Israeli women and children freed by Hamas entered Israel Monday night after more than 7 weeks in captivity in Gaza in the fourth swap under the original 4-day truce, which began Friday and was due to run out. 33 Palestinian prisoners released by Israel arrived early Tuesday in East Jerusalem and the West Bank town of Ramallah. The prisoners were greeted by loud cheers as their bus made its way through the streets of Ramallah.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken met with the Foreign Minister of Turkey, Hakan Fidan, at NATO headquarters in Brussels, Belgium, on Tuesday. Blinken said they are focused on numerous issues, including the crisis in Gaza, Russia's aggression in Ukraine, and Sweden's entry into NATO.
Good morning. It's a pleasure.
Blinken is attending Ukraine-focused meetings on Tuesday and Wednesday in Brussels and Skopje, North Macedonia, where foreign ministers from NATO and the Organization for Peace and Security in Europe are gathering. Later this week, Blinken will return this week to the Middle East as the U.S. hopes to find a way to extend a ceasefire in Gaza and get more hostages released, the State Department said.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be with my friend and colleague, Foreign Minister Fidan. We had very, very good consultations and conversations when I was in Ankara just a couple of weeks ago. I was very much looking forward today to pursuing those. We obviously have the crisis in Gaza that we are all working to contend with. We have questions here at NATO as we track toward the summit next year, the 75th anniversary, including Sweden's accession. We have the ongoing Russian aggression against Ukraine, among many other issues. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to share perspectives on all of these issues. Grateful for the collaboration that we have with Turkey, a critical, very valued NATO ally. So, Hakan, good to see you today.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, all. As Tony said, we are here today to attend the NATO ministerial meeting, and we have very important subjects on our plate. And I am sure we will have very frank and open discussions, and we really value our friendship and cooperation. And thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. Come on in. Okay.
A court in Moscow has extended the detention of Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich, arrested on espionage charges, until January 30th, Russian news agencies reported. Gershkovich, a U.S. citizen, was detained by the Federal Security Service on March 29th in the Ural city of Yekaterinburg on charges of espionage that carry up to 20 years in prison.
The hearing took place on Tuesday behind closed doors because authorities say details of the criminal case against the American journalist are classified. Gershkovich was detained in March while on a reporting trip to the Russian city of Yekaterinburg, about 2,000 kilometers or 1,200 miles east of Moscow. Russia's Federal Security Service alleged that the reporter, acting on the instruction of the American side, collected information constituting a state secret about the activities of one of the enterprises of the Russian military-industrial complex. Gershkovich and the journal denied the allegations, and the U.S. government has declared him to be wrongfully detained. Russian authorities haven't detailed any evidence to support the espionage charges.
Well, that's all for today. Thank you for staying with us. We'll see you on Thursday with more news and updates. Goodbye.